Hi, I'm Alicia Rabrager, and oh, Janae, I can't hear you now. You're muted.
That better?
Yeah, it is.
This is Ghene't and Elicia. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us on Conversations on Health, Happiness, and Hope. Um, so, May is National Mental Health Month. So, we wanted to start by playing a little game of myth or fact or true or false. Um, Depression affects more women than men. And put it in the comments what you think. Is that true? All right, and we are streaming in the group. Oh, good morning, April. Thank you. April's with us.
Good morning.
Try to split my screen here so I can see both
Yeah,
the chat and make sure
that
our stuff's working over here. All right. So April says false. That is a good um, a good thought, but depression actually affects more women than men. However, social anxiety disorder is about equal. But you also need to keep in mind that women are more likely to seek assistance than men. So it's only what we know that it's reported.
yes, yeah, I think that's true too. And then also I think some of depression, like there's different ways that people express depression, and
Mhm.
anger tends to be something that men lean towards too more than women, but anger is kind of seen as just a normal emotion for men to have, or it's more acceptable in men than it is in women. So we don't really look at someone who is angry and say, "Oh, they might be depressed." We're just like, "Oh, they're just a jerk." um, so, and it was when I was looking into depression and things like that, I was very interested because I'm like, "Oh, I'm not depressed." But then when I looked at how depression is expressed, and I'm like, "Oh, I tend to have a lot more of a quote unquote masculine expression of depression where I kind of keep it inside, then all of a sudden I explode and I get really, really upset. I can't sleep or I sleep too much, that type of thing." Like for me, I don't know I'm depressed until I start feeling the physical signs of it. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, what's this all about? Why am I sleeping so much? Why am I so irritable and frustrated all the time?" That type of thing. So, I don't know if you think that that is you're more of an expert in that area than I am.
Well, um, not clinical or anything, but I've just done a lot of reading. I'm surprised, first of all, that you have like the anger and the outbursts that you mentioned because you just seem so collected and calm all the time that I talk to you. So so bravo on recognizing that. Um, but yeah, for me, like when it comes to anxiety, I definitely feel it physically in my body. Like I shake or I get stuck. Like that's one of my problems recently with like the sleep and whatnot is I'm so anxious
Mhm,
that I just stay in one place for way too long until I'm ready to like psych myself up to like leave the love seat or something. Um,
mhm.
but yes, I've been told and read that anxiety and depression in men is typically more of anger, frustration, like impatience. So
Mhm.
the lack of sleep as well is both for like men and female, having trouble sleeping.
Mm.
Thanks for sharing.
So, oh, thank you. So our next question, which I thought was really interesting, is the last lobotomy was performed in 1940. Is that true or false?
In the US.
In the US.
I forgot to
Makes
add
sense.
that. And then again, we're just given some time to
Hmm.
um, chime in with what you think is the answer. And then same if you're watching the replay.
And then, so is anybody responding just yet?
I don't see anything on my end.
Okay.
Let me refresh.
Okay. Well, it is a very unique question. Like I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I learned this in my behavioral health class, and I thought it was fascinating,
Hmm.
uh, and also kind of scary and sad. So,
Yes.
yeah, there's nothing, no guesses. So if you want
Yeah,
to
all right.
reveal that,
All right. So the answer is no, that the last lobotomy in the US was performed in 1967, which is interesting because when you said 1940, I was thinking in my mind, I thought 1950s, but really didn't think that it happened after the 50s, because so much had come out already by that point.
Mhm.
But I guess not 1967. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and that person unfortunately died after that procedure. And
Hmm.
I think of that time frame and I'm like, wow, this is during our parents' um, lifetimes, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so glad we have come so far.
Yes. Yes. And always before I say make this statement, I always want to make the disclaimer. Believe in our medical system. I take my medications, I go to my doctors, I see my mental health professionals. But it just always amazes me how the first go-to with traditional medicine, especially in the West, is to remove parts of our body that seem to be troubling us instead of really trying to find a root cause to help those parts. And then years later they backtrack, but it doesn't do anything for the person who died or for the people who were lobotomized and had, parts of themselves removed, and you can never get that back. So, my
Exactly.
suggestion is always do your research. We've come a long way and there's a lot that we know now, a lot of science behind a lot of things, but there's a lot we still don't know. Um, there's a lot we're still discovering every day.
Good advice. Thanks, Janae. Um, this one might shock you too. So in 2019, what is your guess on the number of people living with a mental health condition? And this is worldwide. And again, we'll just give some time to put a response in the chat. I'm gonna refresh again just in case I need to keep doing that. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any responses, but in 2019, worldwide, there were there were 970 million people with a mental health disorder diagnosed, and that is one in every eight people.
Wow. So that includes like stress, anxiety disorder,
Hmm.
ADHD, all of it. Yeah.
All of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot because like just think of the numbers of times you get together in a group of like 6, 8, 10 people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
one in eight.
Right. Right. Exactly. Um, that's really, it's telling, I feel like, because um there's so much in our society that we're just rushing forward and doing lots of things and um self-care and taking time to not work all the time is really hard. Um,
Mhm.
I think we touched on that before about sometimes when we're not working, we feel like we're not doing anything, but sometimes not doing anything is the work that we need to do. Um, and then there's, some people there. I was reading this article last week, and I can't remember where it was from, but it was talking about the fact that people move from the city to the countryside thinking that they're going to get the rest and relaxation that they need and get rid of stress, which, yes, I mean, I will say I have way less um of that go, go, go stress. But the
Mhm.
backside of that is when you live further out, you have less access to medical care and mental health care, and everything's a little is further away. Um, so there are pros and cons to that. So it comes down to really that self-care is really important no matter where you live. You have to get
Mhm.
that self-care in and take that time to be outdoors or just sitting and journaling and doing things like that as well, which is really important, which helps, I think. It helps with any kind of mental stress or anxiety that you're having. It's not necessarily the cure all. Obviously, there are things that you need to go to a therapist for or a support group for. Um, but those can be, I don't want to say a stopgap, but those can definitely be what you do in the in between times to kind of help get through.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I like that you're pointing out that it's not just, in busy cities where people are stressed. Now, sometimes that definitely does add to it, like the traffic and stuff and avoiding accidents. Um, Trying to remember where I was going with that. Um, I remember when I first started going to my counselor, I would take a notebook and I would write down like the things that we were discussing. And then he would sort of give me homework and like, okay, well, go home and reflect on this. And then I come back and I would reflect on it and I journal it and then I would read it to him or let him see what I wrote. So yeah, doing that work in between, I totally agree.
Yes. Yeah. All right. And then our final question is the second most common disability in the US is depression. Fact, true or false? Fact or fiction?
I think this is kind of fun.
It's kind of the things that you don't normally think about in this way all together at once.
Right.
Kind of like puts everything in perspective.
Yeah. Perspective is huge.
Yes. That makes me think always back to like that GI Joe. Now you know, knowing is half the battle.
Yes. And the
You probably don't remember GI Joe. You're too young for GI Joe.
I may have seen some GI Joe. um, but also the um, what is it? Now you know, do better. or once you know, do better, something like
Oh,
that.
okay. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
kind of the same concept.
Hmm.
I always forget that we're not the same age.
Me too. Until I say something like that, I'm like, oh, that's right.
Right. All right. So I'm not seeing any responses, and for people who will be watching the replay, I think that gave them some time. Um, so,
It is a fact. So depression is the second most common disability in the US, with pain being number one. And that's interesting because I never really thought of pain itself being a disability. So, like, I have pain with arthritis, and so to my mind, I'm thinking arthritis is a disability, but really it's the pain that's a disability, the pain that comes with it. Because arthritis is really just swelling, and if you can take control of the swelling, then you don't have the pain anymore.
well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you deal with so much, and I'm just amazed by you with all the things that you do.
Oh my goodness. It's I think that is just when I put it all separate, it feels like a lot, but then when I just put it down under autoimmune because I have the Hashimoto's, then it makes sense. It's like, well, it's probably really not arthritis per se. It's probably another form of the autoimmune disease because that's what it does. It just moves around, attacking different parts of your body.
No, I
So,
don't
yeah.
want that.
So, but I did find out that strawberry leaves are so good for you for inflammation. They're anti-inflammatory. They have a lot of flavonoids and riboflavin in them.
Hmm.
They have antioxidants, which are the main anti-cancer ingredients in medications, which they get from plants. Um, and they're really, really good for rheumatoid arthritis. So I picked some strawberry leaves yesterday and made my first strawberry leaf tea. So, like I just found that out yesterday. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, that's so cool. I didn't know that."
Well, thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that. I didn't know that either, and I have another friend who has rheumatoid arthritis. So you
Mhm.
mentioned putting it in tea. Are there
Mhm.
other ways to like prepare this, or how
So
many
yeah,
to use?
you can use so you can, so it's just like when you make loose leaf tea, you just take a few leaves. I did 5 leaves and then I steeped it in some hot water for about 5 minutes. And then I added the leaves and then I poured the water over a loose leaf. I was making Earl Grey tea and a chai. And then I poured that water over that and then let the leaves sit in there too and steep a little bit longer. Some people will make a tincture with it. Um, but in order to make a tincture, you need to use alcohol. And so I prefer the teas. I'm not like a tincture really is more like you want to make it and you have it um, to use it when you really, really need it. So if you're having like a bad um like really bad swelling or something, then you take out your tincture and you take a little bit. It's like a medicine dose of your tincture. So with that, it's like you would fill a jar, like a mason jar, um, with the leaves, and then anything else in there, any other herb you want to put in with it, and then you would cover it to the top with it would be 80% vodka or 100 proof
Hmm.
vodka. So it's got to be really strong. You have to seal it like in that mason jar, put it in a cool, dry place, and it has to sit for 6 weeks. I think it's
Wow.
6 weeks. Yeah. So it's a process. So I prefer the tea. um, you can throw it in salads, you can stew it, cook with it, in your food. So yeah, so it's just like a green. You can use it like a green. You can blanch it or boil it a little bit. My only thing about boiling greens is that when you boil them, it tends to take out a lot of the medicinal value of
Mm,
the plant. But it's still good, especially if
yeah.
you're eating it in quantity with mixtures of other materials too, other foods. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Thanks
I
so
thought
much
that
for
was so
sharing
cool.
that. Yeah. And thanks for explaining what a tincture was because that was a new term for me and maybe a new one for our viewers too.
Yeah, I just learned that recently too, like within the last year. And I just bought some vodka in order to make a tincture, but I
Mhm.
haven't done it yet just because it's so involved and I'm going on vacation. So I won't be
Yes.
here to watch it because you kind of have to go look at it and shake it and
Oh,
make sure
wow.
it's doing okay, so they're all very like old school, old homesteading,
Mhm.
on the farm and, I mean, not necessarily on the farm, but just like the way people used to preserve things
Yeah.
um, back before there was refrigeration or access to, medicines and things like that. I mean, there's so many medicines in your yard. It's unbelievable. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm always fascinated to hear those things because obviously you do have a lot of land and you're doing so much out there and like, oh, I'm growing my vegetables and look at this garden and hey, look what I just made.
Oh, it's fun. It's just I don't know, it's just really cool getting into all of that different stuff and um it takes a lot of time, you know, um for me to feel comfortable with it because I'm just so used to being able to go to the store and buy what I need.
Yeah.
Run down the Whole Foods or something like that. Um there is no Whole Foods out here. So, yeah. So if I'm gonna be healthy, I gotta do it myself.
Yeah, you're the Whole Foods supplier.
Exactly. Oh, so, I was thinking about, when you were saying this month is mental health month, like what are some of the things that you do to keep your sanity and you know, stay
Who,
even keeled?
who's to say I have my sanity? Just kidding. My husband might disagree. Um, so I do regular therapy. Um, Not to sound cliche, but I have been meditating every day. For quite a while, I was only doing it at night because like I like the guided meditations. Um, but recently, I learned how important it is just to sit in silence and to let yourself meditate that way. So I'm trying to do that more by just sitting outside. If it will stay warm. um, and the affirmations that we talked about, I
Mhm.
really liked yours about how you had like a purpose for each main feature on your face. And then
Mhm.
I was watching Queer Eye, which is something that I loved when I was younger, and now it's on Netflix. And they had this one affirmation for this person who was having such a hard time with who they were, who they identified with, how they looked. So I adopted this one, and it's I accept myself completely. And you say that
I
in the
like
mirror.
that.
Yes.
I
So
like that. I am
thank you,
writing that
Jonathan.
down because it is, I feel that. I am having such a hard time just accepting myself the way I am. And so, but I like that because there's no caveats to that.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
and it encompasses everything. Like you don't have to think about which ways do I accept myself. I just accept myself completely.
exactly. Well,
Oh,
I'm glad you
yeah.
like that as much as I did. So,
Yeah, I love that one. What about your hobbies? Because I know you do lots of like you paint and do all that stuff too.
yes. Um, so I like to color. That is something that I started doing with my mother-in-law. So she has a bunch of adult coloring books, and one of the first times I went back there, her mother gave me one, and then I've been getting them as gifts like every year since. And it's just so nice because you can be really mindful of the colors and like turn it into artwork when I have like more energy, more of that creative energy. And then you can really just minimize how much you do, you know, constrict yourself to just like two colors or three colors and just let the time pass, and it's just so therapeutic. And again, I'll either do this outside on the swing in the warmer weather, or curled up on the love seat with a blanket, Nala next to me, some hot tea. And that's something that I really enjoy. Painting, of course. My mom is a fantastic artist.
Yes.
Thank you. And I definitely have a lot of passion for the arts, because of my mom. Writing, as you said, so
Mm-hmm.
um, journaling and just reflecting. I don't know if it's much as a hobby, but I like to write in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then something that my husband and I just started is RC drift cars. And I'll tell
What?
you what, that is something that will completely take your mind off of whatever is bothering you, because you are focusing on the cars are 1/10 scale, so they're
Okay.
this big. Um, and I don't know if you've ever watched drifting, but you're going sideways.
Okay. Yeah.
And
I know drifting from Cars, the cartoon.
oh,
That's
nice.
what I know it from.
I know it from one of my favorite Fast and Furious movies, Tokyo Drift, where people will argue it has the most racing of all the movies. But yeah, it has what's called a gyro, which helps keep it stable and keep it turning. Um, and it's actually kind of hard to go straight in the vehicle because it wants to kick out and help you so you can drift. And this is something that Chris and I have done 2 weekends in a row now. And the people there are so helpful. They're so fun. And they're like, oh, you're doing better than I was my first time, or I couldn't even get around the track. And there was this little, I call him a prodigy. He's the son of one of the owners, and probably only 2 or 3 years old. And I was just amazed how well he was driving.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
so much better. Like, you would have thought he was an adult. It was really
Wow.
impressive. But yeah, that is a new hobby. That's a lot of fun. That's completely different from all of my creative hobbies, because once I was even not criticized, but had this comment made, by the business coach. You're like, what do you do for fun? It's like, no, painting, that you use your mind. Like writing, you use your mind. What do you do for fun? And I was like, oh, I sing and dance occasionally just for myself. So
Oh,
that's
that's
that's a
hilarious.
hobby.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, yeah, yep. I never thought about it. Yeah, painting, writing, it's work, even though it is fun and it's enjoyable, but it is work. But yeah, and so it's just remote control. That's so cool.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that was a thing, like RC drift racing,
I
right? Is
didn't
what you called
either.
it? Wonder That'd be neat to see. My son might enjoy that.
Yeah, definitely check it out to see if there's something like that around you.
Yeah. I know a lot of the kids out here have four-wheelers.
Yeah.
So that's something I might look into in like a year or two. I mean, they're expensive. I mean, they're just as expensive as a regular car,
Hmm.
10, $16,000. So,
Wow.
um, but I notice a lot of people out here have them, and the kids enjoy riding them around up and down the road and on the trails and back in the woods. So, um, yeah. So that's something to look at, RC drift racing. Um,
Yeah. And maybe
yeah.
even with the four-wheelers, you can rent one, maybe?
Mhm. Oh, that's true, I never thought about that. Renting one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Did you have more hobbies to talk about? Because if you do, great. And if not,
Alright.
there are some helpful resources for people if they're looking to know more about mental health.
Okay. So I mean, I like you, I like to paint. I'm not my sister, my daughter is the real artist in the family. She
Oh,
has a really great eye for color and things like that. But I do like to paint, and I like to work with woodworking. And so I'll make
hmm.
like walking sticks, and right now I'm working on homemade cutting boards out of walnut. So I just bought myself a grinder because the wood was really uneven. It was more than I can do with my sander. So to grind it down to get it even and then sand it. And then I'm going to start working with different mediums for sealing it. So walnut oil is a good choice, you know, because don't want to seal it with anything that is not edible. You want it to be food grade. So
That
there's
makes
walnut oil you can seal with, olive oil, linseed oil, that type of stuff. So um, I'm looking forward to getting to it. Um, but I've just been so busy with work, and then, preparing to go to town for 2 weeks and everything. It's been a lot, but when I get back, I'm excited. I still have it in the box so that when I come back, I can, like, open it
sense.
up, be like, "Oh, there's my grinder."
Oh, well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's something I didn't know that you did. Have you posted any of that, like, on your page or in your group?
No, I have not. I have not. 'Cause, yeah, I just started doing the the cutting boards. I just started working with the cutting boards. I've been doing the walking sticks, but they're more like a labor of love. It just takes me time to, like, find the right stick, and then to work with it, it's just 'cause it's a hobby, so I
Yeah.
just, do it slowly, and, um, I I've the last 2 that I made, I gifted, to other
Oh,
people, so, yeah.
that's very nice.
Right. So, you were talking about resources
Yes, thank
for mental
you.
health.
I love how I always learn something new about you.
And you.
So there are a few sites where you can find information. The first one to talk about is NAMI, is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. Um, Now, this may not have the most in depth or wide scope of information, but it really is more of like a community for people because you can become a member and participate in blogging and seeing what others have to say about their experiences and learning from that and sharing yourself. um, they also on NAMI, they have like funding for like donations and stuff. That was something that kind of turned me off from the site a little, was just because there were so many pop-ups for like donations and
Mhm.
fundraisers. But I think that's really great because they have events that you can sign up for. So if you're looking to, I don't know, maybe find more people who are going through something similar to you or similar to one of your loved ones, then NAMI is kind of a good place for that. Um, there's also one that has a lot of scientific journals, like peer reviewed, and that's NIM as in Mary, H as in Henry, dot NIH dot gov, and that's the National Institute for Mental Health. And this is a government website, so it's heavily monitored. This one's not like member usage, but this has such a broad scope of like every condition you could think of. Um, and you can just find a lot of credible, usable content on there, so you can really increase your understanding, and also it'll probably point you in the right directions of places to go to help you out with that. And then there is also the SAMHSA website. Um, Now, this I believe is specifically for Michigan. I'm not
Okay.
sure. I what?
Oh, no, 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 I was just
Oh,
saying, "Oh, okay."
I was wondering if maybe you knew or not.
Mhm,
But the Samsung website, you get to it from mental health, excuse me, mentalhealth.gov, and then it's substance abuse, mental health, and now I'm trying to remember the rest of it. But anyway, SAMHSA is very credible as well, and they deal with like substance abuse disorder. I mean, excuse me,
mhm,
substance use disorder, substance abuse, along with how that ties into mental health. Because it's kind of a cycle and it actually physically changes the brain, which before I took this class, I feel bad saying this. I always kind of thought like it was a choice, unless, someone physically drugged a person and
mhm.
they got addicted that way. So this really opened my eyes, learning about substance use disorder. Um, but yeah, those are some great resources where you can find more information about
Okay,
mental health and what to expect, and what kind of treatments are available.
okay, and then can I add to that? Um,
Absolutely.
there's Al-Anon.org,
Oh,
and so Al-Anon, is like the sister organization to AA.
oh,
And Al-Anon is basically a support group for family members, friends. Like it says family members, friends, but really anyone who is affected by someone else's drinking. Um, and it could be a parent, it could be a relative, it could be a child, it could be a sibling, a spouse, a coworker, a good friend,
mhm,
anyone really, as long as, you know, because there's very specific ways in which that, the disease of alcoholism, which is what I call the umbrella, and then underneath that is, like other substance abuses and, drugs
mhm,
and things like that. But there are very, the symptoms and the way that it affects people who have dealt with that are very similar. Though you have very similar, what is the word? Presentation of symptoms as other mental health issues. And so it's very interesting because a lot of times if that's what you're dealing with, your stress and your trauma is causing your body to react and to be a certain way. But if you can get down to that core, um, face that core issue, then some of those symptoms kind of start to dissipate over time, as well as dealing with some other um, sources um, like therapy. So, and then here I'm just looking up, and then there's AA.org, which of course is if you are suffering from the disease of alcoholism. Um,
yes.
then you can go there, and there's meetings, there's groups. I always say the AAs have more fun than the Al-Anons because they get to go on retreats and stuff like that, and
Oh,
we
wow.
don't have that in Al-Anon, usually because we're dealing with fallout. So,
Oh,
um, yes. So, but, it's, it's once you're committed, it's a great, great program. And of course, the first step in any disease, whether it's dealing with stress or social anxiety, or whether it's um, dealing with a substance abuse issue, or identifying that you're dealing with somebody else's substance abuse issue, is admitting it. um, admitting that there's something going on, because you can't take any steps to do anything unless you can admit that there's a problem.
Agreed.
Mm. Yeah. So, yeah. So that's those are my two little things. Oh, and BetterHelp. I mean, I'm not
Yes.
affiliated with BetterHelp at all, but I'm just been looking into that recently as an alternative, especially being in such a rural area. Um, so they seem to have very reasonable prices, and yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. So that's something I know that's popped up in a lot of different places as a resource. So I'd like to talk. We talked a little bit about hobbies, but what I wanted to do was maybe do a little bit more research on like the effects of that mentally, like, you know, and maybe I'll put it in the comments later on after you post the video.
Yeah, I like that.
So yeah. But
And thanks
yeah.
for mentioning BetterHelp. That's something that I've mentioned to a couple family members as well for like the costly. And I looked at this website that compared like five or so of the online therapies, and it was up there. And I'm not affiliated either. So if you do that, I really hope that it's a good experience. And yeah, let us know.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so good talking to you today, as always.
Yes, it was great talking with you as well, and thanks for always bringing just so much knowledge to our broadcast. Thanks for watching, whether you're live or on the replay. This is Conversations on Health, Happiness, and Hope, and stay inspired.
And do something that makes you stronger every day.
Love it.
Bye.
Bye.